The Richard Serrett Show.
All right, welcome back. Every Monday at this time, we check in with our emergency preparedness expert, Stefan Verstappen. He is the author of The Art of Urban Survival. And today, we're going to talk about communications. Obviously, if you're forming a community, these are not necessarily even people that are your neighbors. Some of them may be. Some of them may be around the block. Some of them may be across town. That's your community. And when the lights go out, when the power goes out, how are you going to communicate with them? Maybe you set up a website for your community, your emergency preparedness community, and lights go out, so the internet's down. No Facebook, no Instagram. The cell towers go down. You can't send them a text. How will you keep in touch with your community? How will you know what's going on? Stefan Verstappen, again, is with us. Emergency preparedness expert, author of The Art of Urban Survival. ChinaStrategies.com, the website, ChinaStrategies.com, and FormingCommunities.com. Do we have Stefan? Are you there, my friend?
I'm here, Richard. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. And how was your weekend?
It was okay, but today I was given another strike on my YouTube channel. Apparently, I'm spreading egregious and extremely dangerous medical misinformation.
You're a bad boy. You're a bad boy.
I'm very bad, but I take each one of these YouTube strikes as a badge of honor, for crying out loud. I've been telling the truth for over 20 years now, and if that gets me banned on all these platforms, then so be it.
Exactly. Okay, so I was discussing, what happens to your communication system when the lights go out, when the power goes out. And I was mentioning, you've got neighbors, and that's fine. You can just walk across the street or whatever. But sometimes your community includes people that may live across town. So what happens? How do you continue to communicate with them?
Well, first of all, we need two radios. If you're prepping for what's coming, then you're going to need two radios. And one radio is the typical emergency radio. You can buy them at Canadian Tire for like $25, $30. It's got a little crank on the side so that you can recharge the radio. It's got AM, FM, and then it claims to have shortwave radio, but I've never been able to pick up anything on shortwave radio except one time a music station in Mexico, which wasn't very helpful. But it's good so that you can, even if you run out of batteries and you run out of power, well, you can turn this crank. Now, it's just a plastic crank. You just got to go very careful so that you don't break the handle off. But as long as you're careful, it's useful and it's functional. And then you can turn into AM, FM radio. For example, about 10 years ago, I don't know if you remember, we had this sudden storm in Toronto, and it flooded half the city. You may remember seeing photographs of the GO train.
Oh, yes.
It was in, 8 feet of water there in the Don River Valley. And while it knocked the power out where I was living, I knocked it out for 10 days. Now, anytime the power goes out, because I'm a survivalist and because I'm expecting the worst, I always want to know, is it just my town? Is it my neighborhood? Is it the province? Is it countrywide? Is it worldwide? What's the cause for the power going out? So the first thing I did is I got out my emergency radio, cranked it up, tuned into AM radio, those kind of, news and weather on the 10s kind of radios. And I listened to see if there was any updates on what was going on. Well, I listened for an hour, and there was not a single story or an update of what was going on with the power going out. And I continued to listen for several hours. It wasn't until like 10 hours later that finally one of the news stories broke that, the power went out in Toronto. Well, that's no bloody help to me. No, I mean,
if only 960, Saga 960 was around then, you would have known immediately what was happening.
Well, I tune into 960 now. Listen, Richard, I listen to your radio show almost every day. You're a fantastic.
You're the one.
I'm the one. But really, you put on a great show and you have great guests. I have to say, I'm fascinated to listen to your radio station. And I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up your butt.
No, you're saying that because I just gave you $50. No, Stefan. All kidding aside, listen, we've got to take a quick time out. We got to take a quick time out. We'll come back and we'll talk about hand cranked radios and other communication systems to stay in touch, not only with your community, but to find out what's going on when the power goes out, as it inevitably will. We'll be back with more of our conversation in about 3 minutes.
Back to the conversation on the Rich and Sarah Show. News Talk, Saga 960 AM.
Stefan Verstappen is our emergency preparedness expert, the author of The Art of Urban Survival, ChinaStrategies.com, ChinaStrategies.com, and FormingCommunities.com. And we're talking about communications when the power goes out. Not necessarily just to communicate with members of your community, but also just to find out what's going on out there. Listening to the police band, the police radio, or just, news and information. So you've got the hand cranked radios. What else?
Well, the hand crank radio is okay for moral support, right? You're sitting there in the dark and, you can turn on an FM station, your favorite hip hop station, and enjoy the music. It's for moral support. But what I also have is I have two other radios. One is a walkie-talkie, just one of those cheap walkie-talkies that you get for $20. Excuse me. My neighbors live just about quarter mile away, half a mile away, so I can contact them using my walkie-talkie. And I could ask them, is the power out in their place? Because when the power goes out, first thing I think, did I pay my hydro bill? Are they cutting me off? Is it the city? Is it the province? Anyways, but the most important radio you can buy is a ham radio. You can get a cheap one on Amazon for about $65. They're called a Baofeng, Baofung. They're cheap plastic, but look, they work okay. And everybody in my community, in our community group, has a Baofeng radio. Now, what you have to do is you have to go online and do a search for, like what I did, radio frequencies, ham radio frequencies, Toronto. And then you get a list of probably like 500. I got the radio frequencies for everything from air traffic control to police, ambulance, and fire department to security at the Royal York Hotel. And what you got to look for is the police or the emergency services frequency. Now, this is a frequency that they all communicate on: ambulance, fire department, and police. So when the power went out there 10 years ago, and after I couldn't find any information on AM radio, I sparked up the ham radio. I tuned it into the emergency services band, and within half an hour, I knew everything that was going on in the city. I knew, first of all the emergency services were maxed out to capacity within the first 30 minutes. All the police were out, putting up roadblocks to prevent people getting onto the the Don Valley Parkway because it was flooded. Certain highways out of the city were flooded and they were being closed down. Ambulance was, going around to buildings trying to get people out of elevators that were trapped in elevators. And the fire department was searching up and down the Humber River because a couple of kids were seen at the side of the river and there was a flash flood and they might have been flooded down. Anyways, so now you know exactly what's going on. And personally, I prefer to know what's going on around me when there's an emergency. And the only way to do that is by tuning into a ham radio. Now, I know everybody thinks you need a license to have a ham radio, but this is not true. You can buy a ham radio. Like I said, you can buy it on Amazon, $65, $70. The prices is going up all the time. So I don't know what the most recent price is, but it's not a fortune. Now, you are not allowed to broadcast, so you can't talk on it except in an emergency. And if there's an emergency, then anyone, whether or not they have a ham radio license, they can call for help. All you have to do is say, Mayday, 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 3 times, and then call for help. So let's say, the place is on fire here and we don't have a phone. and I need to get the fire department over here, I can get on the ham radio, tune into the emergency services frequency, and give my Mayday call and say, look, there's a fire here at Young Street in St. Clair, and we need help. That's okay. You won't be prosecuted for that. But most importantly is you can listen in to what the police are talking about, to what the fire department is talking about, and to what the ambulance services are talking about, and they will give you the information you need.
Fantastic. Now, if you did want to become a ham radio operator and, let's say, communicate with other members in your community that you've cobbled together, and some of them live across town and so forth, is it a big deal to get a ham radio license so that you can broadcast?
It's not really a big deal because they relinquished the requirement of you learning Morse code. That was a big sticker for a lot of people. Learning Morse code is a bit of a pain. But they removed that requirement, so now you can get the license. And there's even ham radio clubs. There's one in Toronto, and I think it's called the Ham Radio Emergency Alliance or something like that. They will teach you for free if you join up to their club. And what they do is they help to coordinate services during an emergency. So they will train you for free, provided you volunteer that if there's an emergency, you'll spark up the ham radio and you'll coordinate with them and you'll coordinate with emergency services and facilitate the communications. Now, we have here in our community, like I said, everybody has a Baofeng. And we did a radio test a couple of days ago, 2 weeks ago, and we were able to get a hold of everybody in our community. Now, this is a 30-kilometer range. We have a couple of guys that have like a base station with a 40-foot antenna, and they can pick up and receive broadcasts from all the portable handheld ham radios that the individual members have. Now, I can't say whether or not this radio test was legal. I can't say that.
Oh, got it. All right. And do you have to have a special antenna, like a big radio, not a huge radio tower, but, you know, an antenna outside of your home in order to operate a ham radio?
No, you don't. When you buy the Baofeng, it comes with what they call a rubber ducky, which is just short, like a 4-inch stubby antenna. The whole radio is about the size of a pack of cigarettes. I mean, there's nothing to it, right? So you can carry it in your pocket. Now, what I've done, my radio is, you know, a slight grade up above the Baofeng. It's a Yesu. And what I've done is I bought a 15-inch whip antenna so I can take off the little rubber ducky, put a 15-inch antenna on it, which will extend my range. But I also have what's known as a roll-up dipole antenna. So this is a 20-foot cable, and it's a dual cable, and it just rolls up and it fits in a pocket in your backpack. And I can hang that in a tree, or I can hang it off my balcony. At the bottom of it, it's got a 20-foot coaxial cable that screws right into the top of your little radio. So with that, I've got like a 40-foot tall antenna.
Wow. And it's battery operated?
It's battery operated. So
you could take that with you anywhere. You could take that with you into the wilderness.
Yeah, if I had to bug out, like I put it into a bag, so I call it my bug out radio kit, and it's got everything in there. So I've got backup batteries, and I've got the dipole antenna. So if I had to go up north and I get out of town, and I still wanted to know what was going on in the city, I could hang that antenna from a tree. That's how it works.
Fantastic. Stefan Verstappen, emergency preparedness expert, author of The Art of Urban Survival, ChinaStrategies.com, FormingCommunities.com. Stefan, you have a great rest of the week, and we'll check in next Monday.
You too, Richard. Bye-bye now.